The Assembly is now in session. Assemblymember Medina notices the absence of a quorum. The Sergeants at Arms will prepare the chamber and bring in the absent members, and the clerk will call the roll.
Ashajian, Alejo, Allen, Baker, Bigelow, Bloom, Bonilla, Bonta, Bro, Brown, Burke, Calderon, Campos, Chang, Chow, Chavez, David Chu, Canson Chu, Cooley, Cooper, Dababne, Daly, Daly, Dodd, Eggman, Frazier, Gaines, Gallagher, Christina Garcia, Eduardo Garcia, Gatto, Gibson, Gomez, Gonzalez, Gordon, Gray, Grove, Hadley, Harper, Hernandez, Holden, Irwin, Jones, Jones Sawyer, Kim, Lackey, Levine, Linder, Lopez, Lowe, Mainshine, Mathis, Mays, McCarty, Medina, Melendez, Mullen, Nazarian, Obernolte, O'Donnell, Olson, Patterson, Quirk, Rendon, Ridley Thomas, Rodriguez, Salas, Santiago, Steinorth, Stone, Thurman, Ting, Wagner, Waldron, Weber, Wilk, Williams, Wood. Madam Speaker.
I'd like to ask our guests and visitors in the rear of the chamber and in the gallery to please stand for the prayer. Today's prayer will be offered by Father Papademos. Father Papademos.
Good afternoon. Let us pray. Lord, today with the internet, Facebook, television, and radio, many people are saying many, many things. Indeed, with so much saying going on, what people say is becoming less and less important. At the same time, people are moved by what we are, our personal experience, commitment, and dedication. Lord, grant us your grace to be an example by showing love and by helping encourage others to follow you. Amen.
I'd like to ask our guests and visitors to please remain standing and join us for the flag salute. Please join Assemblymember Chow as he leads us in the pledge.
Ready, begin. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You may be seated. Reading of the previous day's journal.
Assembly Chamber, Sacramento, Wednesday, February 3rd, 2016.
Mr. Holden moves and Mr. May seconds that the reading of the previous day's journal be dispensed with. Presentation of petitions, there are none. Introduction and reference of bills will be deferred. Reports of committees will be deemed read and amendments deemed adopted. Messages from the governor, there are none. Messages from the Senate, there are none. Moving to motions and resolutions to today's absences. For legislative business, we have Assembly Members Bigelow and Bonilla. For personal business, Assembly Member Bro. For illness, Assembly Members Lackey and Waldron. And I'd like to recognize Mr. Holden for your motions.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I request unanimous consent to suspend Assembly Rule 118 and allow Assemblymember Lowe to have guest photographers on the floor today. Mr. Lowe's guest will be seated at his desk for the introduction.
Without objection, that request is granted.
Mr. Speaker, I request unanimous consent to suspend Assembly Rule 45.5 and allow Speaker Atkins and Assembly Members Bonta, Linder, Nazarian, Patterson, and Wagner to speak on adjourned in memory today.
Without objection, that request is granted.
At the request of the author, please send file item 13, Senate Bill 503, Hernandez, to the inactive file.
Without objection, such shall be the order.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
This time we're going to move to guest introductions. We have one guest introduction. I'd like to recognize Mr. Lowe for your guest introduction. Mr. Lowe.
Thank you very much for allowing me to introduce my mother. As we all know, today is a celebration of Lunar New Year, and as a good son, we're supposed to spend time with our families, and so I could not be in San Jose, so she was kind enough to join me here today. Hopefully I'm a good son. Please join me in welcoming my mother, Stella. Stand up.
Thank you, Mr. Lowe. I want to recognize a former Assembly member who is here on the floor with us today. I'd like to recognize Assembly Member Sharon Quirk Silva. And with that, we're going to move to business on the daily file, to the concurrence and Senate amendments. For file item 1, we're going to pass and retain. For the motions to reconsider file items 5 and 6, we're going to continue those items. Moving now to Assembly third read. We're going to take up ACR 113. The clerk will read.
Assembly Concurrent Resolution 113 by Assemblymember Lowe and others relative to Lunar New Year celebration.
Mr. Lowe, are you prepared to present?
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker and members, for allowing me to present our ACR 113 Lunar New Year celebration on behalf of the Joint Asian Pacific Islander Legislative Caucus. We celebrate the Lunar New Year and recognize the Year of the Monkey. In California, as we all know, Lunar New Year is celebrated by the Vietnamese community, Chinese, Korean, and Southeast Asian communities predominantly. And each group has their own unique traditions in observing this holiday. As API communities around the state celebrate Lunar New Year, I'd like to share with you some of the traditions as a part of the holiday. Mr. Speaker, permission to use props.
Without objection.
On your desk, you will find a red sheet providing the explanation of all 12 of the years. This year is the year of the monkey. If you were born in 1944, 1956, 1968, 1980, 2004, and 2016, it is the year of the monkey. I will also like to mention some notables in the year of the monkey, which include Liz Taylor, George Lucas, Eleanor Roosevelt, and our very own Speaker-elect Anthony Rendon in terms of the year of the monkey. But we will not expect any monkey business this year, no doubt. Let me also just highlight the significance of our bamboo, in which each of you has a prop and a opportunity to recognize the cultural celebrations of this. As you can see, these plants are very thirsty, so I encourage you to water them very much. So this bamboo is known as positive energy, and 3 bamboo stalks is the desired amount and combination as it brings together life, happiness, and wealth to its owners. Again, you also see a tangerine, which signifies good luck, and of course, a red envelope with a nice little treat inside. So again, on behalf of our joint Asian Pacific Islander Legislative Caucus, we join in celebration of Lunar New Year. And let me also say, as a member of the LGBT caucus, it is good to also celebrate the significance within these respective communities. I ask you in joining me in supporting this resolution, and I ask for the roll to be open for co-authors.
I'd like to recognize Assemblymember Cristina Garcia.
Members, I rise in support of ACR 113, recognizing the Lunar New Year. The celebration of the Lunar New Year in communities throughout California reflects a rich cultural diversity and commitment to racial, religious, and cultural tolerance. I often brag about the diversity of my district. I represent Cerritos, which is a home to a large Asian community that has contributed greatly to the richness of my home. During recognitions such as these, I can't help but feel extremely lucky to grow up and live in a place where I have the opportunity to learn and celebrate other cultures while retaining my own. Lunar New Year is a time for families and communities to come together, reflect on the past, and to pay respect to elders and ancestors. So this year is the year of the fire monkey. This cheeky animal bursts with exuberance and brings with it its fast pace and motivation. The monkey increases communication and humor and wit. In particular, the monkey's gift is the ability to find unconventional solutions to old problems. Perhaps this year we dare to be different. Perhaps this year we will have the conversations necessary in order to help us find new solutions to old problems. May 10,000 things go according to your wishes. Happy New Year.
I'd like to recognize Mr. Levine.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. As a co-author and on behalf of the Jewish Caucus, I rise in support of ACR 113. The Lunar New Year is an annual celebration where we embrace California's cultural heritage and enjoy the traditional festival of the Lunar New Year celebration. Vin Liu of the Marin Asian Advocacy Project and co-planner of one of Marin's largest celebrations said, "The Lunar New Year is a time for people from all walks of life to get together and joyfully welcome this coming year." An old Chinese proverb says, "Learning is a treasure that will follow its owner everywhere." Cultural celebrations like Lunar New Year are part of what makes California great. I thank the author for bringing forward this resolution, and I urge and I vote.
Assemblymember Jones Sawyer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As chair of the California Legislative Black Caucus, I rise in support of ACR 113, which will mark today, February 8th, the beginning of the Lunar New Year. The Lunar New Year is not only celebrated by over 2.5 Asian Americans across the state, but 1/6 of the world's population. As a matter of fact, the largest celebration outside of China takes place in San Francisco. These celebrations are an integral part of the Asian culture and signify a fresh start for the new year. As you can see by my jacket, I too am participating in Lunar New Year and a fresh start to the new year, as this assembly will start a fresh start for this year. Thank you, and I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
I'd like to recognize Ms. Chang.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you to my good colleague from the Silicon Valley for bringing this resolution before us today. Lunar New Year is an inspirational time for those in the Asian community, but also has a strong presence throughout other communities in California and the United States. It's about family and taking the time from our work to be together. It's also a time to focus on the future, to look forward to new opportunities and prosperity. I hope this important commemoration reminds us all of the blessings of family and longevity. And as Californians celebrate this time, I wish you all a prosperous and healthy Lunar New Year.
I'd like to recognize Assemblymember Kansen Chu.
Thank you, Speaker and colleagues. I rise to support Resolution 113 and ask you to join my tradition. Many of you may know that I was born and raised in Taiwan in a very agricultural type of society. And the Chinese New Year means that we are not only giving thanks to our God of worship, our family, our parents, and our ancestors, as well as for those that brought us to the position we're in today. And also, Chinese New Year is a good time for us to prepare the soil, sharpening our tools, whatever the business that you are in, and also renew some friendship with your families and loved ones and neighbors and so on and so forth. So I wish you all a very, very happy New Year's to come and facing the challenge that we may be facing this year. And just to make a note that the next big celebration for our Chinese culture is on August 15th, the full moon in August. That's when we celebrate the harvest of the 8 months of hard work. So, 恭喜发财, and to my Vietnamese constituents, chúc mừng năm mới.
Seeing and hearing no further debate, Mr. Lowe has asked for the first roll to be open for co-authors. The clerk will open the roll. Members, this is for co-authors. This is for co-authors. The clerk will close the roll. There are 63 co-authors added. Without objection, we can take a voice vote on this matter. All those in favor, please say aye. All opposed, say nay. The ayes have it. The resolution is adopted. We're going to pass and retain file items 8 through 11. Moving now to file item 12, ACR 132. The clerk will read.
Assembly Concurrent Resolution 132 by Assemblymember Atkins relative to V-Day.
Madam Speaker, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and good morning, members. I rise today to seek your support for ACR 132. Domestic abuse and rape harm people from all communities, regardless of economic status, of gender, or race, and impacts the communities that we all represent. One of the reasons this violence remains so prevalent is because it often occurs in private spaces. When coercion, fear, and violence become routine in home, victims are less likely to report the crime. The United Nations found that around the world, 1 in 3 women will face physical or sexual violence in her lifetime. In 1994, the United States adopted the Violence Against Women Act, and yet today a woman is beaten every 9 seconds in America. 1 out of every 5 women in college will be raped or experience an attempted rape. On February 14, 1998, Eve Ensler, the writer of the acclaimed play, The Vagina Monologues, established the first V-Day to raise awareness about violence against women and girls. On V-Day, groups around the world will perform the Vagina Monologues, and the proceeds will go to local programs and support victims of violence and rape. V-Day has raised more than $100 million, taken place in 200 countries, and benefited 13,000 community anti-violence programs, and its message has reached more than 1 billion people. V-Day is about more than performing a play. It's about ending violence against women and ending the stigma about speaking up against violence. Please join me in supporting ACR 132, which declares February 14, 2016, to be a different kind of V-Day. Members, I ask for your aye vote on ACR 132, and Mr. Speaker, the first roll to be open for co-authors.
Seeing and hearing no further debate, Madam Speaker has asked the first roll to be open for co-authors. The clerk will open the roll. Members, this is for co-authors. This is for co-authors. The clerk will close the roll. There are 61 co-authors added. Without objection, we can take a voice vote on this matter. All those in favor, please say aye. All opposed, say nay. The ayes have it. The resolution is adopted. The Senate third reading items 13 and 14 we are going to pass and retain. There are no consent calendar items today. That concludes the business on the daily file. We're going to now move to adjournments in memory. The following number of members were granted prior permission to speak on an adjournment in memory. Members, if I could please ask you to take your seat for the adjournment. I'd like to first recognize Madam Speaker for her adjournment.
Members, today I ask that the Assembly adjourn in memory of Elizabeth Melky Berger. Elizabeth was the first woman lobbyist in Sacramento. She worked for the railroad industry and later was a longtime representative of the California Children's Hospital Association. She also was a co-founder of the California Children's Lobby. It's hard to imagine now, but one of her big victories was getting legislation passed allowing women to have credit cards in their own name. Elizabeth loved politics and mentoring, and she combined those loves by training young people in how to navigate the world of the Capitol. Those who knew her best say she always had a strong moral compass, and she was steadfast in her ability to work behind the scenes to accomplish great things. Not a bad reputation in this business. In addition to politics, Elizabeth Berger found delight in great friends, great food, and the San Francisco Giants. I knew that would get some of your attention. I ask that we adjourn in her memory and extend our deepest sympathy to her family and many, many friends, some of which I understand are in with us today to be part of this adjournment in her memory. And so as we pause and think about that, it was hard for me to realize that women have, it's seemingly we have come so far, and yet at the same time we are paying tribute to a woman who got a very significant thing done for us as women in terms of our fiscal stability and security, and certainly that is something that her friends and her family should be incredibly proud of. So it's an honor to actually adjourn in her memory today.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'd like to recognize now Mr. Bonta for his adjournment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. Today I rise to adjourn in memory of Jeremiah Jackson, a resident of Oakland, California, who passed away on January 23rd of this year. Jeremiah lived a life filled with love, friendship, and generosity, and his legacy will live on far beyond his 34 years of life. His lifelong curiosity and enthusiasm for learning eventually led him to Stanford University and Harvard Business School. After attending Harvard, Jeremiah joined the office of Sacramento Mayor Kevin Johnson, where he directed Think Big Sacramento to promote job creation and economic development projects across the Sacramento region, including helping to oversee the development of the new Sacramento Kings Arena. Jeremiah continued his career in public service by bolstering Los Angeles' economic development while working under the leadership of Mayor Antonio Villaraigosa. He later moved to Oakland and began working in San Francisco as Vice President of Strategic Planning for Wells Fargo up until his untimely death. Jeremiah cared deeply about his community and was involved in the boards of both the Mural Music and Arts Project and the I Have a Dream Foundation. He is survived by his wife, Amy Alyssa, his parents, Michael and Helen Jackson, and his siblings, Isaiah, Alicia, Elizabeth Jackson, and Jordana Jackson Smith, and her husband, Brenton. Jeremiah Jackson will be dearly missed by the communities he served and the many who loved him.
Thank you, Mr. Bonta. I'd like to recognize now Mr. Linder.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, I ask that today the Assembly adjourn in the loving memory of my father, Robert Linder. My dad got the chance to sit with us here on the floor just a year ago for our swearing in. He was a very humble man, always more concerned with making sure that my sister and I grew up right than changing the world. But he always inspired us to dream big, whether it was rock star dreams when he bought me my first drum set when I was 9 years old, or talking politics over beers at his house in San Felipe. He was born in Mexico City just days before an almost 8.0 earthquake. So I guess in a way, he was born to rock. But his dream was to retire at the age of 50 to his beach home in San Felipe, Mexico, and he did just that. During my childhood, my dad enjoyed embarrassing me in front of the people who now vote for me in my hometown of Norco. He was a very successful businessman. He spent his entire career in the title insurance industry, where nobody was just a client. They were his friends, and he had many. I never heard him speak ill of anyone, even behind their back. He was always gave people the benefits of the doubt. I remember a particular weekend in San Felipe. We didn't bring the Sea-Doo because we weren't expecting cooperative weather, but when we got there, the conditions were perfect for sea-dooing. I'll never forget that he drove all the way back to Norco, which is an over 6-hour drive, just to pick up the jet ski, and then drove back another 6 hours, all in one day, just so us kids could have some fun. My dad was my hero. He loved collecting rocks or gardening, brewing his own beer, or fixing stuff around the house, but most of all, he loved music. Music was our shared passion. He introduced me to good music like the Beatles and the Doors and stuff, but he also brought good music into my life like Frank Zappa, Mahavishnu Orchestra, or King Crimson. We listened to great drum solos together. I'd introduce him to newer drummers like Tim Alexander of Primus or Carter Buford of the Dave Matthews Band, and he would find a solo from Ainsley Dunbar or Billy Cobham to show me. Never forget, on my dad's last day on earth, he really couldn't communicate. He really had no way of letting us know that if he was there or not. And my nephew Brody and I were sitting in his room, both on either side of him, me playing what I can on the guitar, and my nephew Brody playing some really, really nice tunes. He's an incredible guitar player. I'll never forget looking over at my dad. He had his eyes closed, but he was in peace. The music kind of flowed all around him and within him. And I remember seeing him just nod his head just ever so slightly with the beat. So we just kept on playing. So thank you, Mr. Speaker and members, for allowing me to adjourn today's session in memory of my father.
Thank you, Mr. Linder. I'd like to now recognize Mr. Nazarian.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. Today I ask that we adjourn in the memory of Alice Sylvester, who was a resident of West Hollywood and Assemblymember Bloom's District, and I came to know her through her son, a good friend, and a community activist, Larry Gross, who is the executive director of the Coalition for Economic Survival. She passed away 13 days before her 92nd birthday and was born to a Jewish-Hungarian family in what was then the country of Czechoslovakia. But this woman had an amazing story. In 1944, when her family was sent to Auschwitz, there was a malfunction on the day that her and her mother were in the gas chamber, ended up surviving, and within a short few months was liberated from the camp that she was held, and ended up moving at some point to the United States and made her life here. But she was extremely quiet all throughout her life. She never really brought up this issue because she wanted her family to live without knowing the difficulties and the challenges and to have a brighter day. Well, it wasn't until one day in 1980, while she was driving down Sunset Boulevard, passing by Hollywood High School, where she came across the American Nazi Party combating the notion of Holocaust and the mass killings, that got her to a point where she finally realized she couldn't be silent about the issue anymore. And she started talking about it and was one of the first individuals who was interviewed in Steven Spielberg's Shoah Foundation program. Thereon, she was a regular at the Simon Wiesenthal Center as well as the Museum of Tolerance, and was a frequent lecturer at police academies. She is survived by Larry Gross, the daughter-in-law Mimi, sister-in-law Thelma, niece Karen, and cousins Sharon and Robin Greenspan. May Alice's story serve as a reminder of the resiliency of the remaining Holocaust survivors. Thank you.
Our final adjournment of the day will be offered by Mr. Patterson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, asking you to join me and literally thousands in Central California to adjourn in memory of 3 young people who died in a car accident last week in Fresno. They were on their way to a job site. They were all employees of the California Conservation Corps and all former Clovis Unified School students. Serena Guatemala, Rhonda Shackelford, and Justin Van Meter were just starting their young lives. They were excited about their futures. Serena was just 18 years old. She joined CCC a few months ago. She was a mentor to her classmates at Gateway High School in Clovis. She volunteered at a local shelter for survivors of domestic violence. She was determined to make a better life for herself, and she did so with humor and a beautiful smile. Rhonda was 20 years old and joined the CCC in January. She was on the path to getting her high school diploma. She joined the CCC because she wanted to learn about leadership and team building. Rhonda wanted a career where she could work with animals, and her family rejoiced in her joyful soul. Justin was 21 years old and also had just started with the CCC in January. He loved the outdoors. His goal was to work for CAL FIRE as a firefighter one day. He graduated from Clovis West High School and had just completed the paperwork to return to campus as a volunteer. Justin is the son of a Fresno police officer. He was loved by everyone who knew him. We will miss them all. We ask that this adjournment not merely be a moment of sadness, but to rejoice in these 3 young people and in the choices and the decisions they were making and the opportunity for them to grow and to learn. And so we're asking that you join in remembering these bright young people, and perhaps we honor them by asking that you join with us as we are joined by Larry Notheis, the Regional Director of the California Conservation Corps, joined also with Jennifer Spear, a CCC Corps member. We know that they share our condolences with the families and our deep appreciation for what CCC has meant to the lives of these 3 young people. And we will remember CCC in 3 C's, but we'll also remember 3 young CCC members, a trio of wonderful young people. And we're grateful for their lives, and we remember them fondly and share the deep sadness of their family and loved ones. And thank you for the CCC folks for what you do and for being here and remembering these 3 wonderful young people. Thank you.
Members, thank you for your adjournments today. Please bring names to the desk to be printed in the journal. All requests to adjourn in memory will be deemed read and printed in the journal. Moving now to announcements, the scheduled session is as follows. On Tuesday, February the 9th, check-in. Wednesday, February the 10th, check-in session. Thursday, February the 11th, check-in session or floor session upon the call of the Speaker. And Friday, February the 12th, floor session at 9 a.m. All other items remaining will be passed and retained. All motions shall be continued. Seeing and hearing no further business, I'm ready to entertain a motion to adjourn. Mr. Holden moves, and Mr. May second, that this House stands adjourned until Friday, February the 12th at 9 a.m. or upon call of the Speaker. Quorum call is now lifted.